Father Arroyo Cuesta was the source of this. And the oldest document we have is a picture of his actual handwritten score. And when you look at the score at first, it's wow, this is pretty neat. It shows a knowledge of written music. And the date of this is somewhere in the early 1800s.
Right.
So to put it in perspective, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony debuted about 1808 at the Vienna Opera House. So it's around the same time. So written music was very highly developed by that point.
It was really our basic discovery through researchers that we were able to get our hands on Father Arroyo Cuesta's writings that were in the Berkeley Library under microfilm, and we were able to get a copy of that microfilm. And so we got a copy of his actual writings of his journal. And from that journal, we found a piece of music that reflected his work with the Mutsun Indians. And the thing that's important, I think, is to realize that music was integrated as a big part of the doctrine here in San Juan. So music was used a lot to teach not only the sacraments and the traditions of Catholicism, but it also allowed them to use the Mutsun language within that doctrine. And so one of the things that we made a discovery about was this particular piece that Cuesta had written by his own hand really indicated and pointed to the possibility that the lyrics may have been written, but first impressions I thought it was Latin. And so when I showed it to Tim and we talked about it, he said, well, you know, this is kind of weird because it's not Latin. And so when I checked with our scholar, Dr. Ruben Mendoza here at the mission, he took one look at the score and he said, that's Mutsun. That's a Mutsun word. So that kind of led us in a direction of something new. And so it was really discovering what that piece of music was all about. And I sent it to Tim, and Tim was able to decipher the music parts.
So we had the image of the score in Cuesta's own hand, which does show the notes, and it gives a general indication of timing, but not rigorous, because there are measures with a single note in it, and there are others with lots of notes. He wasn't real careful with that, and he didn't need to be, because the music is driven by the lyric.
Right.
So you're going to sing it as it goes. But then we had another advantage, because there's the Stevenson transcription of that very same piece that we found.
Right.
And that helped because some of the handwriting was so unclear to me that since I didn't know Mutsun, I was not at all clear exactly what it was, and the resolution of the picture was pretty poor, and I really couldn't make it all out. But Stevenson had done a really much better job than I was. So I went through and took the Stevenson, and where I doubted that it was right, I went back to the Cuesta and found that actually Stevenson hadn't transcribed it quite right. And then I was going, well, which one do I like better? Because after all, European music of that era, you were expected to be an improviser.
Correct.
It was not, oh, you're going to play everything exactly note perfect, or, I mean, the whole concept of perfect was not appropriate. I mean, if you're Bach, well, heaven, you're not going to play the same concert twice, you're going to improvise. So eventually it became a issue of editing to what we were trying to achieve. Keep the eye on the goal, and the goal was about 1.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 at the most, of a liturgical piece, but not a mass. It would have been a psalm or a hymn.
Yeah.
And so it had to have a shape to it. It had to have a musical sense.
San Juan was very unique in the sense that it had Father Tapias and it had Father Cuesta, who had knowledge of European music. And using that knowledge to teach was very important in terms of the breakthroughs that they made. And so that the use of music in terms of Catholicism, in terms of church, is a very important piece of doctrine. And so this is true. I was having this discussion with my wife about music has always been a layer, very important layer, as far as establishing relationships with outside groups. And so in Mexico, they did this as well. You know, they used music to teach Catholicism. And so in many ways, as much as it was a doctrinalization that was taking place, it was also teaching them something. But I think the ironic thing, and I think the important thing, is that the language, which happened to be Mutsun, is a very important thing because you're transforming, you're really changing the Spanish structure of a hymn and turning it into Mutsun. That's very special. That's very special in terms of its usage. So it's a real find for us in terms of its musical feeling.
My home